Okay, so I think, yeah, so for anybody that wants to record it, by all means, we just wanted to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's privacy.
Okay, we've got 4 people online and 5 here in the room. I was told that's probably about the size of the group we're expecting, so maybe we should get started here.
You're gonna have fun.
Oh, maybe. Oh, we'll pass the mic around here just so everyone can hear.
You can just sit up at the counter. Yeah. You look important for a day.
So, hello everyone. My name's Bruce. I'm the Director of Planning, or Community Planning for Ucluelet, as some of you probably have gathered. Happy to be here to be able to answer some questions. What I will do is give a bit of an overview. I'm going to share my screen in a second and sort of go through a bit of the overview of the municipal process that got us to this point, and then see if there's any questions, and then go through, okay, what are the next steps? Again, on the municipal side of things. You may well have questions for the developer. We can't answer them, obviously, but we can just try and shed light on what's the process on our side of things, or what's got to this point and what's still to come. So in the room here we have a few people from the municipality. The mayor, Marilyn McCunin, is here, and James McIntosh, who's our Director of Engineering. Dwayne Lawrence is the Chief Administrative Officer, and Nancy is your role currently is acting deputy.
I'm still the EA.
EA.
Still the EA.
Corporate Services.
With a couple of extra hats.
Okay. Many extra hats right now. Because we have some people on Zoom, if there are questions, we'll pass the microphone so everyone can hear and it can be recorded. So if that's all right, I thought maybe we also just start. I would love to know who's in the room and a little bit of meet your neighbors and just a really quick introduction of sort of who you are, and maybe if you have a lot number that you are keeping an eye on personally. It would just be great to know. So as I said, I'm Bruce. I'm the Director of Planning, and I'll just pass the mic.
My name is Silva Mishka. I'm lot number 33. I'll be the very first unit in the complex. I lived in UQE now for like 3 years after moving back from Toronto, but I grew up on the West Coast, so yeah. Just fun fact, I was actually at Amco Homes today looking at stuff, so stay tuned for that update.
Hello, my name is Jordan and I'm number 20.
Hello, my name is Allie. That's my husband Alan on the Zoom there.
Oh, there you go, okay.
We are lot 32, so we're your next door neighbor.
There you go. Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you. All right, welcome. You're across the street. Are you on the left
That's
side or
Andy
you
and
live
Lou,
on the side?
lot 7.
I think we're your only
I
neighbor.
have, just gonna throw this out there, I have to be at another meeting in Tofino pretty soon. There's a lot of questions that I would like to answer before I leave. If I could get this process on the move.
I think that's valid.
All right. Folks online, just really quickly, if you want to introduce yourselves as well.
Hey guys, I'm Alan, Allie's husband, organizer of the First Light group here. Thank you very much to Bruce and the district for hearing us out.
Hi, my name is Bianca. My partner Emil is also going to be in unit number 4.
Hi, my name is Andy. I can't share my video because my partner is on another Zoom call with me because he's in Peru right now. So we'll be in the unit number 26.
I think Mason. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry there. My wife was just calling me on my phone and was messing up my audio on my headset. But yeah, we'll be number 5, my wife and I, and two kids.
Fantastic. I don't think we've missed anyone. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen and we will get moving here. Okay, and that's almost unreadable. Okay, so timeline, really briefly, I'm gonna blast through this and just to sort of get up to here, because I respect you've got another meeting to go to. Lot 13 dates back to 2005, Weyerhaeuser Corp. This was part of a rezoning that they did for essentially all of what is the sort of Ocean West development in their multiple phases. Part of that, the background of this is they made a commitment. There was a master development agreement, which is an agreement between the district and Weyerhaeuser on their lands. It's part of that rezoning 20 years ago. They set aside, or were going to set aside 2 parcels of land for affordable housing. Lot 13 is one of those parcels. It's either total about 7 acres. Lot 13 is a little over 3.5. It was one. The other one's future phase, still to be determined. So that was 2005. And the zoning at the time to lock that in, that zoning for that parcel was, the permitted use was affordable housing. There's a covenant put on the property saying you could only use it for affordable housing, define it as 80% median income or less affording it, which is the CMHC definition of affordable. So all that was put in place 20 years ago. 14 years go by, and Weyerhaeuser has not developed any affordable housing because really the trigger for requiring that those affordable housing units to be built was multifamily or commercial development that was part of their overall master plan. The first phases, and they're just finishing phase 5 of Ocean West. It's all been single family, so it hasn't really triggered that up until 2019. So in 2019, they looked to just sell the property. It, of course, still has the zoning and covenant on the property to say that can only be used for affordable housing, but they sort of looked at, well, look, we're not going to build this out. Maybe somebody else is interested. We had a bunch of inquiries from different developers saying, well, can you take all that off the title? I was like, no, that's supposed to be for affordable housing. So ACMC Holdings, Andrew McLean, he came forward and basically set up an arrangement with Weyerhaeuser to say, okay, subject to getting zoning, I want to try and do an affordable housing development. And he was talking to BC Housing and their Affordable Homeownership AHOP program, which you're all familiar with. So that was in late 2019. We had a rezoning application to go through to create this small lot, basically single family neighborhood. So that went through the process in 2019, basically the proposal with BC Housing, BC Housing, was to create zoning that would allow 3 small lots, 33 small lots. 22 of them are for sale under the AHOP program, and 11 are rentals. So they're affordable rentals, and they have a different kind of housing agreement that goes on those. And I think initially the developer proposed would own them and rent them out, but at an affordable rent, or it certainly has the option to sell them like to businesses who want to use it as employee housing or that sort of thing. So a couple of things that were approved back as part of that rezoning in 2019, 2020. The zoning that allows the use and the size of the lots for the subdivision, variance to the standards to allow a narrower, leaner approach to the road, not the full build, to be basically to fit it all on the site. It's a narrow, compact road. Also, part of that was reducing costs. Essentially, there was also a request to increase from the 80% median income, increase the qualification level of the buyers, open it up to median incomes within Ucluelet, to basically just have a little wider range of incomes that could qualify. Also, there was a request for the municipality to offset the cost of the development cost charges, because any development has to pay its share of the cost of building roads, water, sewer, drainage throughout the municipality. So council at the time, and this was part of the agreement with BC Housing under the AHOP program, council authorized putting $320,000 into the project to offset. That would be equivalent to what the cost of the development cost charges, the DCCs, would be. So that was the first part of cash being contributed out of the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund to support the project. And that's part of, there's an agreement that needed to be in place between BC Housing and the district, because there's basically a matching of that, which adds up to BC Housing offering as they describe it, the second mortgage, which makes the units affordable to the buyers. So 2020, the zoning bylaw was approved. Council agreed to, part of the deal with the developer was a change to the master development agreement with Weyerhaeuser, because their part of this was getting credit for having delivered 33 affordable units. And the timing of that became a bit of a sticking point, because Weyerhaeuser wanted to, because they were transferring the land when the rezoning was approved, and so they wanted credit when the property was rezoned, but just rezoning the property doesn't mean there's actually affordable housing being built. So the district had said, well, no, it's when the subdivision is approved and these lots are created and there's a covenant on each of them, that's the point at which Weyerhaeuser would get credit. So there was some back and forth between the developer and Weyerhaeuser and their deal, and ultimately ACMC Holdings proposed, well, okay, to solve this, he proposed to put give the district an option on the property, essentially. Like, okay, if I don't complete this, well then the district could buy it for $1 and complete the affordable housing. So there's a timeline then that he was then committed to do that. So credit was given to Weyerhaeuser for 33 affordable units when their rezoning was done. And so that's happened. Weyerhaeuser's now completely out of it, and now ACMC Holdings is now working with BC Housing to move forward on creating this affordable, attainable, small lot subdivision. So that wrapped up near the end of 2020. In 2021, the subdivision preliminary layout assessment was issued by the subdivision approving officer, and the subdivision happens in 2 steps. The first is essentially it's what's referred to as the PLA, the preliminary layout assessment. Someone comes in with, okay, I want to subdivide the land. They have a plan for laying out all the lots. The approving officer looks through and says, okay, I could approve this, subject to, here's a list of conditions. And the standard list of conditions is generally, do your engineering services plan to see the plans for how the water line's going to work, the sewer lines, the road, all that stuff, meeting the municipal standards. And so basically that all gets engineered before the subdivision is registered. And that's typical stuff. And I should back up and say this, initially back in 2019, the developer had proposed this to be a strata, a bare land strata, so that the road would be private and essentially the owners within here would be paying for the maintenance of all the infrastructure, all the private infrastructure. At the time, we said, wait a second, if you're trying to do an affordable housing development, that puts a strata fee on every owner. Much simpler to do this as a fee simple subdivision where the road is public and it's maintained by the district, just like most of the roads in town. So we sort of went through that, and that's where the variance of the standards doesn't, it's a narrow 10-meter road right of way. It's not your typical 20-meter standard road. So rather than doing it as a bare land strata where it's private and can be at a lower standard, we said, okay, let's vary it to make it efficient, functional, safe, but not overly costly. And so it has to go through this sort of standard feasible subdivision process. In 2021, so as I said, the subdivision preliminary layout assessment was issued. At the time, around that time, also, we had been talking since 2019, 2020, the district did a project on identifying and mapping tsunami flood risk. And that mapping, as it came out, we made some low-lying property owners aware, including the owner of ACMC Holdings, to say, oh, this is new information that's coming out. You need to understand what's the implication of this for your project. You should have your engineers tell you about this. In 2021, when the PLA was issued, we also reiterated, prompted, that's something you're going to need to look at as part of finalizing the subdivision. In 2023, he came back with an engineering report and request because they said, okay, yes, this does have some work to do, essentially to make sure all of the homes are built above the flood reference plane. Basically, they have to regrade the site because it was hilly and they need to level it out anyways to make sure it's a site that's high enough. And so that engineering work took some time, but it came in. And it came in with a request from council, like, okay, there were some added costs here they didn't anticipate. Would you consider offsetting these costs as well? And council, again, was very supportive of the project and said, okay, we will add another $330,000 into the project. So that brings the total contribution from the district to $650,000. So that was, again, a community affordable housing reserve fund that the municipality has. And then so larger contribution from the municipality pairs up with BC Housing, who are looking at that, okay, there's this cash and you've varied the road standards and you've given zoning, you've done all these various things. They put a value on that, and so they bring $1.1 million towards it. And so that is the total amount that is available within their financing for those second mortgages to bring the price down. That's probably more detail than any of you want to know on that, but that's how it sort of came to be. So that was in place. Subdivision, the PLA was revised and updated, And then at their next step, the ACMC had to go to, again, we're in 2023 here, the BC Housing Board had to approve the project. Basically, BC Housing is a large organization, a bunch of different projects. AHOP program is one of their programs. Essentially, they're the bank for the developer. They're financing the construction, but then also these, for all of the development, including the rental units, but then also holding those second mortgages that make them less costly for the purchasers. So the board approved that in 2023. We were told it was like in late May or early June. That's when you probably start becoming aware and become potential buyers and have, because we heard between June and November, I think was when the pre-sales was all done. And so the developer, one of the things he had to do, I think, was show a certain number of pre-sales for BC Housing before the financing was all sort of locked in. So that was in June of 2023. We had heard, okay, it was approved by the board. One of the things we needed was a final project agreement with BC Housing between the district and BC Housing. And so we had seen their template and it wasn't useful, so our lawyers drafted the agreement. We provided that in mid-July and to BC Housing for their lawyers, and we heard back from them in November that was saying, yep, this is good. So we took it to council in December of 2023, got authorization to enter into the agreement. In January of 2024, we hadn't heard, and in February we heard back from BC Housing. They actually then wanted some changes to the agreement. And so there's a little bit of back and forth because the agreement essentially was around the purchase, the qualifying income for potential buyers. There was a mismatch between what had been told to council all through the rezoning and through their approvals and what some of the approved purchasers' incomes were. So that all went to council. Council said, yes, okay, we're okay with, we have 22 people who have, in town, who have these purchases. I think 18 out of the 22 were within the income level that had been provided previously, but there were 4 that were a little higher and needed housing as well. So, council support, let's allow for that flexibility within the agreement. And so then that was finally signed with BC Housing. And so that brings us up to last spring, I guess. Yeah, that was last March. And then the steps then are around engineering. And so we had in August saw the first, essentially the civil engineering drawings. So typical here, we got approvals, got financing, has pre-sales. The steps are where the engineering of water lines, sewer lines, drainage lines, all that sort of technical stuff around the building the roads and all that details. That's on the developer's civil engineer to provide that work. We saw some first drawings in August. They were not answering all the questions that we need to have answers to in order to authorize the construction. And so there was some back and forth and discussion meeting in September with the engineer and the developer. They revised, and so we had a consulting firm who was providing information to them and essentially redlining their initial drawing set. So they came back with a second submission in November, which again, our engineers reviewed, comments back in January of this year, and at that point we heard that the developer is engaging a second engineering firm to basically take on and finish the civil engineering to get the green light is really the target to move forward with the servicing of the subdivision. That sort of brings us up to today, other than what's on my list here. Letters from you in February that just prompted this meeting, seeing, okay, we have some questions, let's answer them all at once. And the other thing was council approved the road name. Spruce Street is going to be the name of the street. There's a bylaw that names all of the roads in town, and it needed some updating, and then we needed a couple of other ones, but that went through. It's had 3 readings, so there's some, I think, pretty good assurance that's going to be the name of the street. I'm going to pause there, take a breath, and see if there's any questions, and then I'll have another slide that just talks about what are the next steps. Any questions on the last 20 years of development approvals and zoning on this property?
Is this timeline available to us?
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
just some people aren't liking.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious if this timeline's available to us.
I
Or if we could have access to it.
I certainly could make it available. On the slide there, I did, if you want more detail, there's half a dozen staff reports there. I mean, I had a fun time looking back at all of these approvals. Over the last few years, there's, I think, like 6 different reports there of all the details of this, which goes into the rabbit hole of detail of municipal approvals. So there's a lot of information in those, if you wish. So the details are all online as well in those staff reports. There's far more detail in the timeline, but I can certainly, I think we could make a copy of this. This was basically just pulling the dates I was going through, reminding myself of when all those different reports went to council. I should look and see if there's any hands raised or anyone online.
Yes, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So just, my question is regarding the engineering. You mentioned that the first initial drawings were submitted in August of 2024, is that correct, or August of 2023?
August of 2024.
Yep, August of 2024, okay. And what, I know that you mentioned like the specific things on the engineering drawings that you guys were looking for was, you know, water, sewer, you know, all that kind of just general boilerplate municipal stuff. What specifically was missing from the first few submissions that Andrew submitted?
James is gonna take a crack at that one.
Yeah, I can speak to this. So, again, hi, my name is James. I'm the Director of Engineering Services, and infrastructure is my role here. So, what, just briefly some context on this review process is, what municipalities do, large and small, from Vancouver to Victoria to Nanaimo to Tofino to Ucluelet, is generally rely on external third-party consultants in the engineering realm to review engineering development drawings. And so we do that here as well. We have an agreement with an external party. And what they do is they provide external, unbiased professional advice on development reviews. So that's very important for a municipality because that external consultant is able to do a desktop review from afar and provide professional advice on a drawing. And so they're unaffected by the trends or the movements or the pressures that are happening within a community, and they're just able to focus specifically on what they've been trained for, which is reviewing, engineer infrastructure. And so they're functioning on a code of ethics authorized by the BC Association of Engineers and Geoscientists. And what their code of ethics does is it binds them to a standard where they're just doing solid, hardcore engineering review. So it's not the most exciting engineering, but it is very methodical work. And so generally it takes maybe 4 weeks for a small engineering team, maybe one or two engineers to review a subdivision civil design of this size. And so what they do is they receive the engineering package, and then they begin a really methodical review. So they'll hold it up on one side, and then on the other side, they'll look at all the national standards and municipal standards, provincial standards that specifically relate to this subdivision. And so, for example, it's the District Ucluelet Subdivision Control Bylaw, it's the Master Municipal Construction Documents, it's the National Plumbing Code, it's the National Fire Protection Act, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what they'll do is they'll just do a line-by-line review looking at a pipe, and they'll see that this pipe here in this scenario is 25 millimeters, it's 1 inch. And then we'll take a look over this plumbing code, and they'll see over here, that same pipe is supposed to be 27 millimeters or 50 millimeters. And then they'll come over here and they'll put a comment and say, I see you've miscalculated this, it's my opinion, I'm flagging it, can you provide clarity? Prove me that I'm wrong. And so that's just a comment exchange. And so they'll go through the entire subdivision, very methodical, millimeter by millimeter by millimeter. And what that does is it ensures that Canadian municipalities and their infrastructure are safe and functional, and that all the mistakes are happening at a desktop level. Mistakes are very costly when they get passed on to municipalities and homeowners. We want the mistakes to happen in paper form, not in physical infrastructure form. Part of that communication exchange is also formalized. So there's an issued for review set, there's an issued for approval set, an issued for construction set, and that is well understood by the entire municipality that participates, or the entire industries that participates in infrastructure review and construction. So where we are right now with your development, so specific to you, so for lot 13, is that in August we received our first issued for review set, and that set was immediately returned, fully reviewed. It took about just a range of very broad and also quite specific comments for the developers and engineers to address. While I can't get into the specifics of exactly what that was, I can share that it was certainly large enough to issue another design phase and another issued for review. And so we received the first set in August, got back to the developer in September. It went away for a little bit. We received another design set, so a response to those comments in November. And then it went away for a little bit, and then we received another update in December. And so, as Mr. Gray was mentioning, that second update has triggered a change in the personnel of the developer's staff, essentially, or consultant team. And so now where we are is we're waiting. We're anticipating more engineering design reviews. We're engaging with the developer. We're following up. We're asking even the developer's engineers, and we're here. We're active. We're speaking to the developer, and we're trying to get an understanding of where they are at with their engineering review, following this very formal, standardized, kind of normalized, typical procedure. Just with that, because that's where we are now. I've answered your question and a whole lot more, but just wondering if you have any other questions on that.
Yes, go ahead, Alan.
Thank you for answering that initial question. I'm not sure how many of us deal with the same real estate agent, but myself, today I got an update from my real estate agent that Andrew's engineer, I believe it's Newcastle Engineering, is still, they still have not submitted, like you just mentioned, their new drawings. And apparently what is holding them up is they're still waiting on sewer lift station drawings from the district before they're able to submit their whole package. So I just was wondering if you could speak to that and give us a little idea of what that means and where things are at on that regard.
Yeah, so to be clear, what the developer and developers engineers have now received are two responses from the district and the district's third-party consultant that are thorough in nature, a line-by-line itemized list of exactly the blueprint of what they're to provide. Again, this blueprint is in the National Plumbing Code, the National Fire Protection Act, the Master Municipal Construction Documents. The comments are essentially pulled from those formal national publicized documents and put into this review. So they've now received one review saying, for sanitary services, please provide a plan profile, a detailed profile, a visibility that you're connecting to a force main, pressure indication that you're understanding the pressure flows through the system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that you would expect to see in a sanitary civil design. So they received that once, twice, and now we're waiting for them to respond.
Yes, go ahead, Mason.
Just while we're on the topic of engineering firms here, what would trigger change in the engineering firm by the developer? It seems like that would lead to like a large delay, as I doubt the second engineering firm would take the first engineering firm's drawings at face value and would probably have to trigger a whole other internal review from the second engineering firm. Like, was there something not adequate about the first firm?
So while I can't speak to the developer's decisions in terms of their project team, that's a question perhaps for yourself and the owners and the developer directly. So maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand this point for the developer. I just wasn't sure if there's anything from the district side that you could speak to that at all. Thanks.
I think, you know, maybe what I can add to that is that if the, and I'll give an example for the municipality, if we weren't receiving the documents and the details that we're looking for, if we were underdoing a contract, then they're not fulfilling the needs, then we might determine that it would be better to facilitate it through a different party. So we can't speak for Mr. McLean and his firm, but he made the decision to engage another firm to assist him in getting the municipality the drawings that we're required to be able to approve that sort of next step in the development. So, you know, we don't want to, it's very difficult for us to comment on what would determine Andrew for making that decision. It's a question that you would have to ask Andrew and the developer.
I just sort of throw in, I think one of the things, I mean, we have heard that it's Newcastle Engineering who's going to be looking at this, and they're very familiar with the district of Ucluelet's requirements. I mean, they just did they've been doing all the engineering work for Warehousers Phase 5 subdivisions over at the end of Marine Drive, which is just, they're just finishing up actually the construction of all of that. So I think they're familiar with working with the district. Are there any questions in the room here, or I'm going to go on to the next slide and maybe talk about next steps? Yep, here, I'll pass you the mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Alan's question. So I'm just reading the email from the realtor here. And on her end, they're saying that there's these, I don't know what the sewer lift station drawing is, and that she's saying the engineers are waiting on that from you, and you're saying that everything is provided for them to give a response. So that's just a bit confusing for us. What are the sewer
Okay,
lift station drawings?
So thanks for that question again. So part of the development requires to install an on-site sewer lift station. An on-site sewer lift station, we would anticipate comes with a certain level of detail to understand what we're looking at, to consider it safe, functional, meeting basic plumbing code. What we've designed, what we've received so far is not what we would have expected, and not what we see in other subdivisions, and isn't complete enough to review and authorize the installation and construction of a sanitary sewer system that's going to be in place for 50, 70 years and ensure that it's functioning properly to keep you safe. So what we've designed, what we've received as a design for the sanitary sewer lift station on lot 13 is insufficient to review and approve.
I think I can add just a little bit more to that, is that there might be a without reading the email, right, from your realtor, it sounds like there's a misunderstanding. We don't provide the lift station details. That is for the developer to provide to us, and then we review it through our engineering consultants. And does it meet the standards? Yes or no. If it meets the standards, you're off to the races, next stage. So we don't there's nothing for the district to provide, we don't have like a template saying, here's your lift station, build this. Because it's all about volumes, capacity, flow for that site-specific development. So there's nothing for us to provide at this point in time, and the engineering firms are well aware of this. So I suspect, I can't verify this, but I suspect there's a misunderstanding about what's going on with the engineers who are obviously, they would be speaking to the owner, right, Mr. McLean, but they wouldn't be engaged with the realtor with respect to engineer drawings. So I'm just guessing that that's probably the misunderstanding.
I really like and appreciate that added point. So yeah, it's really important to share that we aren't designing lot 13. There is no designs that we create for lot 13. And then the guidelines that are available for the developer's engineering firm to follow are published online. So it's the Ucluelet subdivision control bylaw that has a section in there called sanitary sewer, and the district's design guideline is in that chapter and published online, as well as the National Plumbing Code that has specifications titled sanitary sewer lift stations. And so the developer's engineering firm is to follow those guidelines to design according to the code. And what we've received so far isn't designed to the code.
And I just add that the district's role in this, like as James said, is not to design all of the systems, but ultimately has to, our engineers are reviewing to see, does it meet our standard before at the end of the day the municipality accepts all of that. When the subdivision is registered and title is created to all of your lots, the infrastructure, the road is dedicated, becomes a public road, all of the underground pipes, the pump lift station, all that becomes municipal infrastructure. And so there's a process there where, okay, now we're in the business of maintaining that ongoing. So that's where it's basically a review. Our engineers are like, yep, that's good, that's the right stuff. It's inspected while it's installed, and so there's a sign off and then acceptance of that. So that's kind of the flow of information back and forth. If that helps. I think there was another question back here.
From my understanding, is that on? Yeah?
I don't think so.
Yep. But no.
No? Oh, from my understanding, the pump stations for sewage for the district of Ucluelet aren't up to code either. Are those going to be fixed as well? Our builder is being held accountable to have everything to code perfectly, being micromanaged for this project to go forward, while the pump stations for the district are over capacity by quite a bit, from my understanding.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So there's just two different things to pull up there. So there's being built to code. So yes, Ucluelet's infrastructure is built to code. This process that we're going through right now is evidence that infrastructure is designed by professional engineers. It goes through a thorough review process, and what's constructed in the field meets all the applicable codes. Full stop. The sanitary sewer capacity is under strain. It's having challenges right now in many areas. And the district of Ucluelet, under council's direction, is in the process and in the works of upsizing lots and lots of sanitary sewer infrastructure to meet the community's projected growth patterns, including providing capacity for lot 13.
The history of that is like there was a day back in, I don't know, the 70s when Ucluelet sewage went into the ocean. And so like a lot of municipalities, so there's a time sort of in the 70s and 80s when the province, basically provided grant funding to small rural municipalities to do a better job and start treating their sewage. So most of the sewage infrastructure and sewer infrastructure in Ucluelet dates back to the 80s. Well, that was a few years ago. And so things start to wear out, plus the demand has grown. So that's where, and every municipality is in the same, constantly having to look at how do we fund, how do we upgrade and maintain to be ready for, basically handle today's capacity plus tomorrow's capacity. So each development basically, yes, this is coming online, so it needs to be designed to handle the load that 33 new homes are going to bring on. and tie in. So what's designed here is this will be new infrastructure. We want to make sure it's built right, good for the next 100 years. So so that's the process of this. But yeah, you're right. There are places where we're challenged with updating old infrastructure.
I would just add to that is that the vast majority of the infrastructure, there's a life cycle to it. So there's anticipated between 50 and 70 years. So Ucluelet's infrastructure is at 70 years. So the infrastructure that was designed back in the 50s and 60s has done quite an admirable job of anticipating the growth of the community and lasting. Now, we're now at a point where we have to renew that and increase the capacity of those for the increased development that we are now seeing throughout the community. And that's a combination of single-family homes, vacation rental units. We're doing a lot of work with respect to Monado Bay, Lot 13. There's a lot of work that went into Lot 16 across the road. All of that is the normal process of renewing your infrastructure. So we definitely have challenges. We have 15 sanitary projects that I think is on the list that council approved for funding for that we'll be tackling over the next couple of years, and that will increase our capacity for the next 50 to 70 years. And that's part of that forecasted growth. So it's a normal thing, not to be unanticipated. So our infrastructure actually did pretty good because back in the day they didn't anticipate Ucluelet as a tourist destination with the volume of visitors and residents that we now see.
So I apologize, I'm the guy in the rush here, but you may be getting to this after I leave here with your next slide you're saying. You're going to tell us where we're at right now, but I just wanted to put out there the idea that from my perspective at least, this is sort of like this is like the common saying right now. There's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, and it seems to be slowing things down more than speeding things up. I just feel like if the engineers from the developer are having issues with your whatever they're saying on their side, and you're saying you're having issues with how they're throwing their paperwork at you, and you guys are using a third-party consultant to review both of them, this lengthy process doesn't seem necessary if you got in the same room together. Like, if you were able to sit down, whether it's over a day or a weekend, and hash out all of these details, then put that forward to your third-party consultant so that all your check marks and lowercase j's are all dotted. I just have this overwhelming feeling that this would already be done. So is there any urgency? I mean, the council's already put over $600,000 into this project. We're 2 years behind schedule of a 15-year-old, 20-year-old project. Is there any sort of sense of urgency between the two parties to get this done? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's impossible to get it done. You're saying it's very simple for them to do. They just need to do it right. They're saying, we don't have any information from you. And you're saying, well, it's all online. It's this discombobulated discommunication. I feel like maybe there's a faster way to do this, still doing it up to the codes and of what we need.
Yeah, it's a great question and important to where we are today. So I'll share that when I first came on board in Ucluelet, it was September of 2021, and this fantastic project was underway at that point. And I was told that to wait for civil engineering designs at that point. And so I was anticipating they would come really at any point from September 2021. And so I didn't receive anything until August of last year. And so as I've shared, this process in typical form has a couple of those phases, so sequential sort of mandatory processes known by the industry. And those are in place, regulated by the relevant associations to ensure that proper review is happening and that the communities are built safe and functional. And there's a code of ethics that makes sure that happens quite methodically. And so what I can share is that once we've received those drawings from the developer, I do meet with the developer we do have conversations, and I have met with developers and engineers, and we have met and connected the developers, engineers, and also our external third-party consultants. And so we've opened up the door in a quite transparent fashion for the developer and the developer's engineer to communicate directly with anyone that they want to set up any meeting that they want to, anytime they want to. And we've offered support and assistance to try to speed up this process as much as we can. And so the speed and timing of engineering productivity is really entirely on the engineer's, the developer's engineer. It is entirely up to them to set the pace of how quickly things move. And of course, what they're doing is trying to typically move through as quickly as they can with a great level of competency and completeness of their application and design. And the idea is that when we receive a design, it's fulsome, it's complete, and there are no mistakes. That's a 3-week turnaround. That happens really quickly, and it happens all over the community. The problem is that when we receive a design and there are challenges, it takes additional conversation, additional dialogue. There's stress and strain that happens, and there's challenges, and there's timeline delays. So we're in that now. We're mired in a civil engineering review process that's causing challenges for the developer. And I think their changed personality speaks to that a little bit.
I think I'll add to that, jumping in before Bruce, is that unfortunately there's no shortcut. The design has to be right. The engineer firms that we deal with all the time, they're used to this. Normally this process is fairly quick. Like, there is a detailed review process that's usually 3 to 4 weeks for a set of drawings that is absolutely correct. When we receive a set of drawings that isn't correct, right, or has a significant amount of questions, it just takes more time. It's not about a bureaucracy. We're not throwing red tape at it. We're not trying to delay the project. We're as soon as we receive it, we refer it out. They do their due diligence, and this is very, very important for the community because it's a liability issue for the municipality. If we get it wrong, then taxpayers have to rectify it. We have to pay additional dollars to fix the problem in the ground. And as James said earlier, you want to fix it on paper, you don't want to fix it once it's installed, right? So, installation of pipes can be in the millions of dollars, right? You don't want to get it wrong. So unfortunately, like, there's no quick way to do it. It's technical in nature. It is a process that engineers that are certified need to undertake.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have the microphone.
No,
there.
that's okay.
I just wanted to reiterify, or
It's
whatever the words I'm supposed to use there.
I was not implying that we should shortcut it so that it's just done faster without going through the due diligence of doing it right. I'll try to repeat myself again, maybe hopefully clear. The delay doesn't seem to be anything at this point besides constant communication delays. There's a process that has to go back and forth and back and forth. It takes weeks, and it's now taken months upon years. So I was just implying that not to shortcut any of the engineering, but to cut out the delay in communication. And I know you did say directly that you opened the door for them to communicate with you, but I just wanted to make sure it was, I'm not trying to say, like, we don't need a pump station. I can shit outside. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to imply that. I'm just trying to say that, talking right now for you to us, we're getting answers right now.
Yeah.
We're constantly in the dark here as these owners. Here we are in the dark with our developer. We're in the dark with the communications between you guys, and when we get updates, it seems like it's a finger pointing situation that inevitably ends up looking out from our perspective like a waste of time. Like, this could be solved, or this could be, done in a more efficient way. this process of back and forth, comments, read this comment, read that comment, come back with a new drawing 6 weeks later. I understand they're getting a new engineer now, so maybe that was the issue, but we don't know any of this stuff, that's why we're here, so. But my just point, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't misunderstood that like, we don't need engineers, just build the house. It was, everyone wants this done right for the long term. It's obviously gonna cost everyone way more if it's not done properly, but the process to get it done seems to be, slow.
Sorry. And it's a really good question. I can only say on the staff level, we have repeatedly reached out to the developer at times, going, how's it going? What's, kind of expecting to have some drawings delivered. James, can I ask, do you have any outstanding requests for information from the council engineering on this?
No, they're not waiting for me or my department or us for anything from engineering. We are entirely waiting for the developer's engineer.
And I just put James on the spot. Thank you, James, for taking that. Knowing that was the case, that, we communicate, and this is one that, believe me, this is, we're looking at, okay, there's 22 households in Ucluelet, and they're waiting, and we know you've been waiting, and we've been kind of wondering, like, why is it taking so long?
Isn't there like we could like put some soft pressure on them, like kicking them, like just kick them in the ass a little bit and say, we're like you council, everybody on the council, you're members of the community, and we members of the community are telling you to like go in there and like fight for us, like don't like pressure them, like I don't know if there's like a legal action, they get fined for every day they're over, I don't know, but there's some, like I think it's now up to the council's part to like, yeah, I know that you've asked for them and shared information back and forth, but I think now it's time that you like put some pressure on it and start squeezing them a bit.
Bruce?
I don't know.
I just wanted to say I've been in the mayor's seat for a little over 2 years now, and during that time I meet with my CAO, Dwayne Lawrence, every Tuesday morning. And pretty much every Tuesday morning I ask what's going on with Lot 13. And I have asked that for, well, over 2 years. I've been asking it for 5 years because I was a councillor before I was in there. And honestly, I thought people would be living there like 2 years ago. So it's frustrating for council as well. I sometimes reach out to Andrew directly to see what's going on, and he gives me an update, but it seems to be this engineering issue that is holding everything up.
There's gotta be another, something else to be done.
Yeah, and this is, it's so difficult, unfortunately, is that the municipality only has so many tools in our toolbox. We rezone stuff, we create bylaws, we review documents, we maintain infrastructure. But, once it's rezoned, then it's in the hands of the developer, right? And we really don't have the ability, no council, no municipality has an ability to force a developer to undertake a specific action unless they're in violation of like a bylaw, right? So when we're talking about a development, it is purely in the hands, and the timing is purely in the hands of the developer. It doesn't matter if it's like a luxury condo development, affordable housing development, anything, person's private house development, an ADU, it's all the same. Once we give the approval, we sign off on it and say, go to town, you're good to go. It is a matter of financing, them getting the engineer drawings, they're doing their PLAs, their subdivision approvals and stuff like that. If everything comes in quickly, we review it, and we hope that we receive it, it's all correct, we stamp it, we give it back to them, you're good to go. In a situation like this, where unfortunately we're stuck in this loop on engineering, we don't have any control over it. We can't do those designs for them. It is the developer's responsibility and their role in their development to get those done and get them back to the municipality. We can't force them to expend their resources to expedite that. We can't make them the engineering firm that they choose to do their design work faster. That's not something that staff or council can do. So we've been working with Mr. McLean for a long time. We have a very positive working relationship with him. He's moving this forward slower than I think what he would like, slower than what council would like. We would all love to see this done and complete, absolutely. Staff have allocated time to facilitate it, so as soon as we get the next set of drawings in, it's a quick review from James, sent over to our consulting engineers, and to get that review done. So what we can expedite is that review process, and we have the additional funds and the time and direction to our consulting engineering firm that does this work for us, to, as soon as it comes in, please expedite it. But that's unfortunately as far as we can go. There's no other pressures there's no other pressures that we can use, unfortunately.
To that, I would just add, the other thing that we provide sometimes is funding, and that's where the district is, funding through BC Housing. So there's definitely some, sort of a clock is ticking for the developer, certainly, but that really we can't directly change how he is performing to deliver the development. I should maybe talk about next steps, unless there are any other questions that are right here now.
And Bruce, I'll just check to make sure if anyone online wishes to speak, you just need to raise your hand.
Okay, so the next steps, essentially the first bullet point, they are modular homes, so construction the factory. I heard you make a comment that you went and visited the factory and that things are underway.
Not the factory, just at Amoco
yeah.
in Parksville, so I had a little bit of.
Yes, they actually don't have an actual home like what we have. What we're going to be, they actually don't have one there in Parksville. But I was able to see some interiors of some other homes, the ones that were drywalled, not with the other wall. So we all know that it's 10 grand or plus to get it drywalled, right? So I did see that. I saw like what the bathroom would look like with like the tub and the sink and the toilet and the fixtures. It seemed fine. The only thing I didn't do is like open up the kitchen cabinets or whatever, but everything seems like fine, and I wasn't able to really look at what the windows would have been like, but I think it's gonna be fine in terms of quality or whatever, but I believe that it does not come with steps. So when you have your deck, there will not be steps going into I think you will have to supply those.
I can speak to the process on that a little bit.
There we go. Okay. And the deck.
And the deck will be like wood, like treated pine or something.
So the modular, the home, the unit is being, I guess that could be built in the factory, and really the developer could, make an order for 33 of those. So that sort of runs in parallel with the subdivision. That's build your home, but then he's got all this other work which is around the site and getting it ready for the homes to be delivered. So the developer civil engineer designed the road, water, sewer, and drainage infrastructure. We've just been talking about that. Hopefully we're going to see plans quickly, and so then we review it. Once they're authorized, the developer then constructs and provides security deposit, make sure it all gets built to the municipal standard. That site, a lot of the site clearing and grading's already been initiated there, but you got geotechnical, structural, coastal engineering sign off on all that, road construction, paving, water, sewer, drainage, street lighting, fencing, landscaping, hydro data, all of that stuff goes into so that you have phone service and the lights come on and the water runs. So all that's in sort of being prepped there. And then the developer also provides just the legal documents, sort of the final version of any rights of way or easements, and this piece, the version of this that goes to the land title office to get actually registered with the subdivision. So the engineering, like servicing's in place, that goes in, and so that goes for final subdivision approval and registration with the LTSA. That then creates 33 titles, which are essentially what you end up holding for your lot, and because it goes from being one lot to 33, and the road gets dedicated as part of all that. So then you've got 33 lots. He provides basically a building permit application for the 33 individual lots. So the homes are built in the factory. That's under a CSA standard. Essentially, the building code part happens in the factory and gets certified separately. But on site, it's foundations and the seismic anchoring of your home, as well as decks, stairs, the access, because building code requires that you have adequate access and egress from your home. So no, you can't get occupancy in a house with a big leap out the back door. So that's what the building permit application part is here. So one of those for each of the lots. And so then the modular homes would come in, be placed on those foundations, then the review, the inspection of making sure everything's correct for the anchoring and, as I said, the constructed parts, which are typically the decks and stairs. That leads to an occupancy permit, like, okay, this meets code, it's now safe to occupy. And that's the point where people get keys and move in, and then the last thing is block party. So that's the kind of rundown here of what the steps would be, sort of like typically from here to complete.
I got a question.
Bruce, well, just before that other question, maybe there's a comment that you can provide on when we would anticipate the building permit to be received so that our building department can start reviewing that.
So I just say typically, and that, again, it is something that is provided and the application comes from the developer. So typically it could be prepped, worked on up to and in parallel with the subdivision registration. And as soon as it's registered, now you've got 33 lots and we have 33 building permit applications. If he has the design work done ahead of time, it could be reviewed ahead of time. So the time between subdivision approval and issuing those building permits could be one right after the other. So that timing really is up to the developer. And in this case, there will be some site-specific unique things to each of those building permits, but they're not all radically different. I mean, it is something that should be quite efficient for the developer's designer and as well for the building inspectors to review. It's a pretty straightforward one. And again, the building permit is not all the construction of the house. That's already done. It comes from the factory with a CSA label on it that certifies that all the normal things around the building envelope and the energy efficiency and the safety and the exiting and all that kind of stuff, that's done in the factory and inspected in the factory.
I think just the biggest question with all your people out there with your professional opinions, what are the chances this gets done by June 1st?
By June 1st?
That's where isn't that what we all want to know? Like, really, like, what are the chances with your professional opinions? You've been doing this for years, decades of experience within city council with drawings and engineers and the acts of God happening or what have you. What are the chances? Professional opinion. If you had to go, if you were in Vegas, what would your bet be?
March, April, May. I wouldn't take that bet. Like, that's no.
We would love to be able to answer that question.
Of course, and that, I don't want to come across as anything. That's just I
but
think we all just want to know. We have a lot of experience up there, and we appreciate your time. So it's,
yeah, and it's not about experience. It's about how quickly the developer can get things completed, right? And that is really, unfortunately, outside of our control and our ability to forecast. It's taken a lot to get to where we are today, and there is definitely a desire for the developer, for council, for staff to see this concluded, and for you, the owners, right, even more so. What we can say is that as soon as we get stuff, we will action it, we will turn it around, we will get it done on our side as quickly as possible. We're not adding any extras onto it, we're not asking for anything that we don't have to ask within code, and we will expedite the process as quickly as we can. You can have confidence from myself, I think Mayor McEwen, from my team here, is that we won't delay this. We have no desire to see you wait a day longer to get into the house than is absolutely required to just finish it. But again, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control. It's taken some time to get to where we are, and the fact that we're bringing everything together here kind of says a lot. And
Of
I
course.
would say you would have to read into that and make your own decisions as to
I understand.
likelihood.
And I think it's worth, that would be a good question for the developer, is what is his construction timeline?
Well, I know that they'll have to,
Just so people online.
From my understanding, and I know nothing, I'm just an idiot, but from my understanding, they would have to issue through our real estate agents each a right of rescission or a new agreement and sign off, and I know from my experience from the last couple months, that's your chance to bail out in that right of rescission, I believe it's called, so, yeah, it's not legal advice, but that would be your opportunity too if you wanted to, but June 1st, they'd have to give us some notice prior to that they're gonna be needing to extend the plan, correct? Correct?
We can't speak
We
to
can't
what.
speak to that.
fair enough, but I think that's
Contractual deals
probably,
is.
There's-
We're not
sorry,
part
there's-
of
understand that right?
There's a question online here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just, the question I have more relates to like the current site preparation that's happening, lifting the entire lot up to the tsunami standards. We've noticed, starting and stopping of the work crews and the preparation. I'm just wondering, is there anything related to the district or anything municipal that comes into play with that preparation of the site, or is that mostly, again, like we've been talking about, mostly relating to the developer and everything on their end?
I think I can speak to that. So essentially, the developer has a development permit that was issued, so that is, sort of a broad thing that was authorized by council. So that, essentially put some of the environmental boundaries around the clearing and whatnot. The civil engineering design includes things like the grading design, the geotechnical, overview of that. That's what we're waiting to see. We don't have a grading plan of where the final contours are gonna be, that we can review and then say, yeah, that's correct, or here's, questions or comments on it. I believe that in the interim here, while waiting for engineering, that essentially they're doing some of the basic prep work around, they knew that they needed to remove rock, bring in rock, move it, whatnot. So I think that I'm guessing a little bit, but why it sort of started and stopped a bit, I think it's that the developers had contractors and doing what they can, and I suspect it's also when time is available for the excavator, squeezing it in between other jobs is probably sort of the efficient thing, because without the civil design being approved, it doesn't, there will be a day when okay, it should be full steam ahead and the design is all, what they're following, but at this point it's kind of preparatory work that they've been doing, so that in our mind is like sort of, because we were asking and having this conversation, same question, like it sort of starts, goes quiet for a week, and then a bunch of activity, and I think it's the contractors, trying to, between other jobs, it's probably more cost effective to be just doing what they can and sort of prep until they get that civil set approved.
And just for additional clarity, no, there's nothing on the municipality side. It's a decision of the owner and the developer on the actions that they're taking. So there's no requirements, we're not stopping the work, we're not asking him to do anything. We're just waiting on the engineer designs. Once those are approved, then he's off to the races.
Thank you. I have another question while I'm on here, regarding the engineering as well. In the initial renderings that were shown to us buyers when we first initially were getting into this a few years ago, most of the units were pictured as units that had kind of slanted roofs rather than A-frame roofs. And we were told by our agents through the agents by the developer that the roofs were not able to be built in that way based on something that came back from the district. I just wanted to see if there's anything that, if you could speak to that at all, if there's any truth to that at all.
There's nothing from the.
Joel told me a little bit about roofs today. Sorry, you can go up,
Yeah, when I was speaking to Joel today at AMCO, he was speaking a little bit about the roofs on the interior, which I don't know if it'll match the exterior, but from basically the entrance to the back of the living room will be slanted and the rest will be flat. That's on the interior. Don't know if that's how it's going to be on the exterior, though.
I was just gonna say, if there were changes to the design of the roof, that's not something that's driven by the municipality. That there was, I know that as part of the development permit and the rezoning, he showed typical images of what this is gonna look like and whatnot. One of the things that was, that was there was a building scheme that was on title. And that was a bit of a holdover from when the rainforest subdivision was done. Lot 13 was basically carved off of part of the Rainforest Drive subdivision. And so the building scheme that's registered, and this is again 20 years ago, Rainforest was also left on Lot 13, or placed on Lot 13. And I understand the developer was looking at, okay, do we try and change or have that building scheme removed, because it had some standards that are over and above the municipal requirements or anything like that. That's really about aesthetics of how people would build their homes in rainforest. Well, that didn't quite fit with this development in Lot 13. So some of those changes I think may have been to address that. That was not something that was required by the municipality 20 years ago. That's something that the developer at the time, Weyerhaeuser, I believe, would have put on title. So that may be why there's a discussion around changing the rules. But that would, again, good question for the developer.
And just so you understand about building permits and that, so a developer would submit the design, whatever that design looks like there could be building schemes that it needs to meet, but it's pretty general terms around Ucluelet. So if there's a change in that design, it would have been instigated by the owner, the developer. They submit it. As long as it meets code, it's approved. So as long, we don't go in and saying, nah, that roof line, we want A-frame, we want slant or whatever. We don't drive that. That is purely the developer that drives that. And if it doesn't match the building scheme or requirements, then there would be a process where they'd come to council and say, we would like a variance.
I'm going to jump in because I'm going to correct that slightly.
Okay.
The building scheme council isn't party of that. The building scheme is one that developers put on property, and so really it's like a private thing between all the owners in a neighborhood kind of thing. So that really isn't something that we can vary or anything like that. But that's something that if it's unchanged on title, they may have to sort of meet those parameters of what can roof pitches be or that sort of thing. So really, and in this case, because they're manufactured in a facility, we don't even have a building permit, or that we're not inspecting the roof pitches or the roof structure or anything like that. It's really relying on the engineering and the certification that happens in the factory, so it's a little different purpose than the usual house built on site. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question online, but I just want to double check. Did you still have? So, sorry, I don't remember your name, but B, I believe.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to change it. Just to answer Alan, from what I understood from going to see Joel a few months ago at AMCO, he was saying that the houses got changed from that roof because of the overhang and because of the length of the overhang of those houses. To transport them from Penticton or wherever they're coming from would cost way more because they needed 4 pilot cars and it was a double wide load or something like that. So I think they changed it because of cost, and I don't think it had anything to do with what they were just saying. I think it's a mistake on their part, and it would have cost too much money for them to do it, which is unfortunate. But I'm glad somebody went down and was able to talk to Joel today, because I've been told by our realtor now that we're not allowed to approach Joel or Andrew, which is wild to me. So I'm glad that Joel was super friendly. I'm glad he was still
Yeah,
talking
it's
to
been
you
very
guys,
fun with me.
that to me is like a huge red flag, that we're not allowed to have any contact with the developer or Joel. When I talked to Joel, he gave me more information than I've got from my realtor in the last 2-3 years, so it's pretty wild.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions? One's back here.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, thank you all for sharing today, because I feel like part of, I know.
Financing, the support, the mortgage, and all of the construction financing, the mortgages are being provided by, BC Housing. And really the funding agreement, and this is all public information that's been on umpteen council reports and whatnot, that is that the district and the council has authorized and set aside that $650,000. That's paid to BC Housing. And so that, there is a clock ticking where the expectation is that occupancy would be by September 1st of this year. And so if it gets to that and the developer were asking for an extension or anything like that, that's a conversation now with council. The developer would be standing in front of council asking for an extension, and I think that's, in terms of accountability, that is a point in time where it would be, something where council could certainly put some pressure on the developer. So there are some, safeguards there, if you will, of how the thing could, go in the future. But it really is, as you've heard, we can't act on behalf of the developer. His role is really to deliver at this point. We've provided the approvals to get him to this point, and so that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think Bruce captured it pretty clearly. It is that point in time in September that there is a decision, if occupancy or he isn't like pretty close to being complete, that there would be a decision point that would be in the hands of council. So, we all hope that it doesn't come to that. We're hoping that the construction will be complete or pretty close, or, you guys are actually in the homes by that point in time. But if for some reason it does get to that point in September, the process would be is the developer would need to put in a request, staff would do a report, we would present it to council, and then council would consider their options, and with whatever the developer has to say.
And I would just add, presumably, I don't speak for BC Housing, but their interest is in seeing housing built too. I mean, that's what this whole AHOP program was designed to do, was to try and build supply and make it attainable for the purchasers. So I imagine there'd be some discussions on that end too.
Sorry, I just heard a question about the September versus June. Did you want to speak to that, or?
Is occupancy in September or June 1st?
So it may be two different things. So we are not part of purchase sale agreements or any of that. That is something that the buyers have. But there was a date in time around the financing, the funding of it, that was established some years ago with the council approval. Essentially, the council motion at the time sort of set aside that funding, and it had a longer sort of date so that was September 1st.
I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
Well, just to provide a little bit of clarification on the June 1st date there, as you guys have been saying as well, that's our own agreement with the developer. It seems to have nothing to do with the district. It's what's written in our own contracts for our option, as you said earlier, to pull out of the project if we'd like to. It seems that the September 1st date is a totally different date.
You have a question? Go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify, so if it's not done or seems like it's making progress, excuse me, by September, then theoretically the district could withdraw support for the project?
And I'm not going to speak for council. I don't have that crystal ball, but I think everyone is going to want to see this completed and get people housed. I mean, that's the district's interest. That's why council has put up a whole bunch of money from the Affordable Housing Fund. You know, that's what staff wants to see happen, that's what BC Housing will want to see happen. So, you know, I think that tight date, if it's not, you know, done or real close, is just a date for some real serious conversation with the developer, the district, BC Housing, to understand, okay, where do we go from here? What really is the timeline? And I would be most interested to see what BC Housing's position is there, because there may be, just as your agreements have one thing and we have you know, an agreement around the financing to BC Housing, there may be other things that between BC Housing and the developer as well that he may need to perform. So, but I think everyone's interested is in seeing it completed as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I hope this helps, because obviously we heard questions and yeah, we heard different information from different, you know, people, and so I hope it helped to have everyone together have some questions and answered, because you know, this is probably good to hear everybody's, you know, questions, and yes, you can all, we're available, we're busy, so having, you know, 22 buyers all come in with the same question at the counter would be a little inefficient, so thank you for taking the time to come speak to us. But one more question, I see.
This feels very much like deja vu. We went through the same type of meeting last summer where there was quite a few people that wrote letters to the district expressing concern because the planning department was taking quite a bit of time to get back to them if something was requested. There was an email for them to get the email response back. Sometimes it was delayed by weeks or whatnot, or, you know, they would finish everything that the planning department had asked for, then there was all of a sudden a new survey, a new something. You're missing this. There was constantly something new that was delaying many projects in town from many people. There was so many letters written into the district. So I feel like we had this meeting last, I think it was in the summer, I'm not sure exactly when it was, but feels a lot like deja vu, and it just seems like nothing has much changed. I did hear that there was a survey recently conducted and asking the community if, you know, what their experience was with the planning department. I'm wondering when we're gonna get any information from that survey back, how we will access that information. I didn't hear about it until it was too late to participate, unfortunately. It was before 5 p.m. on the date that it closed, which was February 14th. But by the time I emailed and called the third-party company that's doing the survey, unfortunately, they said it had been closed, so I wasn't able to participate. I'm hoping a lot of other folks from the community have, and I'm just wondering when we're gonna get results from that survey and where we would access that information. Thank you.
It's more than just a survey, and there's a service review underway. I mean, this is something that, you know, that essentially the planning department is being reviewed by a third party. The survey was one part of it. There's gonna be interviews, both of some of the developers and owners and people who've, you know, sort of written in and have participated in the survey. They're gonna be interviewing, and council was surveyed, they're gonna be talking to council and staff as well. So there's a whole process they're going through. The timing of that and when that is, I'll let our CAO speak to that. But I'll also say, yes, there's been some, you know, questioning about there's been definitely a very vocal bit of a campaign in town around talking about what is this, you know, some accusations or rumors around what is the timing and the response time from the planning department. And this is intended to get through basically what are some of the rumors and get to what are actually the facts. And so I'm looking forward to the outcome of this. Absolutely. When it started, it was lobbying in April last year when the Chamber of Commerce came and sort of had this initiation of asking council for an audit of our services. And at the time, you know, I said, welcome it. So it's a great thing that it's happening. So in terms of the timing, Dwayne, maybe you can share that.
I can speak to a couple of things here. Is that when we're dealing with a planning process, right? There is layers. There's a lot of go back and forth, and you know, at different times of the year, There's different loads on the planning department and the engineering, and it's not just one department. When you're looking at building permits and applications, rezonings, there's fire, there's engineering, there's planning, there's development, there's building permits. So it's a complex process. It is a time-consuming one. When all the information is provided, it goes by very quickly. If there's lots of questions, then that process slows down. If there's changes to a development application, to a plan, that adds time to it. So staff respond as quickly as possible, but there isn't only just one application ever on the desk. So there's, I can't speak unless there's a specific application, which we can say is like, okay, here's what this application did through the process, and we can say, okay, well, here was the time it took for us to review, get back commentary, and provide comments to that application. So, the generic comments that it's like, oh yeah, we don't respond, I don't feel is accurate. But we are undertaking a service review of our entire process, and the intent behind that is so that we can provide a better service to the community. Every department, every organization can always make improvements, and our job is to make sure that we're providing a quality service to the community. We've expanded our staffing over the last couple of years because of the volume of applications and rezonings and development permits and improved services and engineering that we've been undertaking. So part of the challenges that in years gone by is that when you only have 2 people and 90 applications or whatever the number is, it takes time to wade through those. What we're doing now is looking at talking to our developers, our contractors, our providers of services that work with the municipality on a regular basis to find out, okay, what is your experience? Where are the challenges that you're seeing? Where can we make improvements to our systems? Is there policies, procedures that are creating challenges in the development community? It is critical that we find out actionable items so that we can make intelligent moves forward to provide a quality service, and that's what our entire team does, and that's what we're hoping for when we're completing this process. That will come through. We had the survey go through, so staff, council, development community participated in that. We had a pretty good response for the surveys that went out. That is being reviewed now. Then the next process will be actually interviews with some of the people that submitted the surveys, staff, council, and community. Once that's done, then they'll write a report and say, okay, here's what we heard, this is what we found, and here's recommendations. And then once we get that'll come to myself, and then we take that and say, okay, how do we action this? All right, so what are the improvements that we can make to the system? So we take that and then we present to council the full report and the action plan to make whatever improvements that make sense for the community to provide a quality service. So it's a good process for a community to go through. Sometimes it's definitely very beneficial at any time. And what we're hoping to achieve from this is a better quality service to the community, and also answer some of the questions and the rumors and the perspectives of some of the community out there. And I can say for certain that we've had some that are very critical of the municipality, and we have others that are very supportive of the municipality, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle, as always, right? Because there's always more than one experience. There is more than one perspective on it, and there's always challenges out there with different developments, different buildings, and stuff like that. So I would say it's like, remember, there's always more than one side to things, and there's a lot of information out there, and we follow process, right? There's building codes, there's bylaws, there is community charter, there's the local government act. Municipalities are unfortunately bureaucracies, and we follow process. That's the job of municipal planning, engineering, administration, is to follow the rules. And if those need to be changed to improve the service, then it's up to council to provide direction to staff to say, this isn't working for our community, change this, right? Or adjust this, if we're allowed. Like building code, we don't have a choice. It's purely in the hands of the province.
So sorry, do you know when about that could be completed? Do you have an expected date for the survey, for the whole, everything to go to
Well,
council?
So the survey's already,
Thank
like
you.
you said, survey closed on the 15th. They're doing their
14th.
review. We anticipate interviews at the end of February and beginning of March. It'll take the consulting firm that we have engaged a couple of weeks to complete their report. So probably end of March, beginning of April, I suspect. But I don't have a specific date. That's not how it works. It all depends on how quickly they can engage the interview process.
Thank you.
Unless there are other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. And online, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just as people are still there, one thing I just throw out as well, if other questions come up, we're in the municipal hall, planning at, ucluelet.ca, you can send an email or just ask questions of myself, any of the planning staff. We are here to answer questions. This was great to be able to sort of answer everyone's questions at once, but if something occurs to you later, it's not like, don't feel in the dark. By all means, reach out.
All right.
Thank you.